Ronald Allen, managing change through checking in with your mutual interests. And this discussion has come about because of a heated disagreement, or should I say elevated conversation with my wife. And it's refreshing that
it's all right. I got plenty. I'll be back.
it's refreshing that we can get to this stage. Okay, there we go. We're back. Perhaps that'll be a blip on the video timeline. Checking in with your mutual interests has come about because of a discussion my wife and I had, and even though we did get a little heated, we did check ourselves. We checked ourselves for a couple of reasons. One, we do know each other. Two, we chose not to go too far. And three, I think probably the most important thing is what was our objective? What was the outcome that we were really looking for? And I'll even add a fourth component to that. What is our long-term objective? Now, I say those four because in business and with families, sometimes a good opportunity can be lost if we just dig in and try to take the high road, take the advantage without any consideration or even compensation for those that we're working with. So let's look at a few factors here when we talk about checking in with your mutual interest. You know, some of my earlier videos, I've spoken about creating collaborative mutual interests. And that means looking at the downside of any particular situation. What could go wrong? Where are we vulnerable? What are the risk factors? Well, we can use the same philosophy, the same approach with family, with children. When children are saying they want to do something, we can ask them, have you considered the downside? In a constructive way, right? We're not putting blame. We're not trying to usurp their desires or interests. More importantly, we are saying, let's look at the downside and see what we would have to do to address it. How ironic. In military maneuvers, in corporate acquisitions, and certainly in strategic games such as chess, we are always looking at what is the potential for a downside. So right there, we have a very different shift in our mindset. We have a very different intent of the outcome. It's not about, I want to take all the marbles off the table. Because let's face it, the next time you come to bat, the next time you come to have to work with an individual, they're going to be very leery of you. They're not going to want to work with you. So I think that's probably the strongest argument, that if you are considering collaborative efforts, if you are considering long-term relationships, and if you are looking for a healthy relationship, long-term healthy relationship, that perspective will serve you well. I also mentioned about not just the intent, but looking at the other person's point of view. Again, these are some of the harder, more, shall I say, tangible issues when we have disagreement, when we have opposition. We know in the media, they love to hype this stuff up, right? They hype it up. Typically, if you look at corporations and unions, it's we want to dissolve the union, and unions want to have 100% acceptance of their terms. Yet, when it comes time to resolve the issue and we share the outcomes, it's always saying, well, we found mutual ground. Do we find mutual ground until another opportunity comes to upset the issue? Are we finding mutual ground until we identify a weakness, a caveat, a change in legislation, a change in rules, a change in assets, maybe the quality of deliverable, right, is not what we suspected. And so we can use the terms of the agreement and even our understanding. When you think of parents talking with children, the child will say, well, you didn't do this. Your interpretation was different. My interpretation was not as complete. We hear these terms across family dynamics, husbands and wives, and certainly in business. So we begin to try to address those by having longer term discussions so that the long-term outcomes are more, again, mutually favorable. Another perspective on this is literally asking the other person or stakeholders or family members, what are your thoughts? What are your top of mind issues? What would you like? How do you like to see the outcome being played out? And how can I help you address that? It changes the dynamics because the other person is probably not expecting you to do that. They're not expecting you to come from that perspective. In many cases, it's not about having answers. More importantly, it's about asking the right questions to evoke the underpinning need in the other person or from the other party. Once you get that conversation, that level of conversation, now you can earnestly build consensus. You can build that mutually collaborative path, if you will. So I'll give you a summary, a synopsis of what happened, because I know, again, Miriam is a very private person. And as I say, 26 plus years, you better have learned something from the person you're with. And I think you should concede, because, again, it's not about me being right. It's not about my way is the only way. And certainly, I think I've learned at times I'm just wrong. I'm just wrong. So, and this is around acquisition of some of our goods and services we need for our dogs. And I felt that it was unnecessary. What was missing from the conversation was simply that she was going to resell some of these products. And I did not ask her about that. And believe it or not, as simple as that sounds, and I'm giving you a synopsis there, that was the dilemma. So now, how did we resolve that? Number one, we just stopped arguing the point. Number two, she does have a strong personality, and I do respect that. So those two aspects, in any conversation, in any situation, if you value the long-term goals, if they are aligned, the long-term goals, if they're aligned, and certainly the time we've spent together, they should be. And you've heard me say on previous videos, live chats, if they're not, have the courage, have the respect, both for yourself, the relationship, and the person you're with. Notice the order I put that in. To remove yourself, because otherwise the phrase, I didn't think they would do that, may just come to mind. So now I want to just quickly go back on those three phases I just mentioned. Respect yourself, respect your relationship, and respect the person you're with. Again, when we talk about establishing mutual benefits and checking in with the mutual benefits that you're seeking from people that you're working with, people you're associated with, you've all heard the expression, I did not expect that from the person you're with, a neighbor, a friend, a colleague. You've all heard the expression, they were my friend, how could my friend do that to me? And you've all certainly heard the expression from lovers and husbands and wives, why would they do that to me, right? Why would they do that to me? And in business, it's typically a fraud situation, an embezzlement situation. Someone is taking intellectual capital and or siphoning off resources to do something else. Well, number one, and this is a construct that I believe in. If you respect yourself, you won't have to do wild and crazy things, right? You won't have to do nefarious things with your friends, your colleagues, your business associates. Just respect yourself. And I think globally, and I do believe globally, people understand that. It's when we come from marginalized mindsets, not economies, not social structure, it's a mindset. Because I've seen it here in the States as much as I've seen it in England, where people are socially and economically marginalized, and they're very pleasant. They're very respectful. They have the highest self-efficacy that one could expect from a human being, not from their position in life. So, number one, we must learn to respect ourselves, because that draws the right energy, it draws the right partnerships, and it sets in place the intent of any engagement when you decide to respect yourself. It means that you won't get involved in nefarious activities. It means you won't marginalize other people who may not have the same level of information that you do. Secondly, respect the relationship. After all, and I love this Southern American term, you've wadeed, you've selected that individual. You have on purpose pursued them. You've corralled them. So why waste that energy? Why throw away the opportunity? Why not learn how to engage with that person? And be humble, have humility about that. Again, we're talking how to mutually establish relationships and develop those relationships. That's the work. Thirdly, respect the person. You are learning how they function. You're learning their triggers. You're learning their strengths and as much weaknesses. And you should shore up those weaknesses, as in any business relationship, by identifying areas of risk and saying, this is what we need to do so we are successful. Once again, this phrasing, this scripting, this narrative helps to support them and bring out their very best, because in most cases, they're not expecting it. In most cases, they're not going to get it from relationships and or other business partners. So that is an intangible. It's like goodwill on the balance sheet. So it's a short session today because I want to enjoy my I've said pretty much what I want to say, and I hope that this is beginning to provide value. Life is a long-term marathon. You, the individual, your character, your social, cultural, your nationality, your theology, all plays into it. It's when you turn on the switch that says, I will define it, I will create it, I will produce it, and then I will sustain it. And I'll be flexible enough that as life's winds of change drive me off course, I can adjust. Find me. Ah, there you go. I'm back after I did all that B-roll in the movie business. When you're doing miscellaneous or transitional screenshots, it's known as B-roll. And while I was being disconnected there, or trying to reconnect, I gave you some filler. As you can see, it's another cloudy day, not dreary, just cloudy. The dew is on the leaves. You can see this. You can see the dew on the leaves. Let's just see. It's absolutely beautiful out here. And I was just in closing, because I've really said what I needed to say today. When we talk about checking into our mutual interests, understand you, the individual, respect yourself, learn how to respect yourself, feel it. That's really where it comes from. Because globally, we all know when we're doing right, and we certainly know when we're taking advantage of others. Secondly, mutually and with intent, respect the relationship in business, especially now where people are trying to scurry to find other options and avenues to do their business, to gain clients, retain clients. And thirdly, respect the parties that you're with, the parties that you've engaged in, the parties that you've drafted those letters of intent and agreements. And certainly with relationships, the time you've spent in cultivating those relationships. And I'll say this, Miriam said a very interesting thought to me the other day. She said, can you imagine all the people who are being abused, who are susceptible to other people's whims and emotional tirades? During this COVID, they can't get out. Are you one of those victims? Are you one of those perpetrators? Is that the intent? Are you as weak-minded that you must prey on someone who is really your partner? I'll leave that thought for you when we talk about checking in with your mutual interests of developing, when you're checking in with developing your mutual interests and collaborations with other people. Check out the website, Ronald M Allen. We've got some new audio files out there for you to listen to across a number of key areas: EU, the id, family dynamics, family and business, and of course life's perspectives itself. The new online courses, second course is being put together as we speak, and you can see some preliminary videos of both of those two courses that we have. So by all means, check them out. Give me a comment or two, that would be appreciated, just to let me know that we are on the right track. And I'll see you on the next video. Ronald Allen, Managing Change Through Effective Communications. This is my think tank. It doesn't get any better than this. Take care.